thanks for coming today. We're going to try to make this under 2 hours. So this is a workshop on design using tools that you already have. I'm going to first talk about some learning objectives so you know what you're in for. First, you're going to learn to apply the functions of Microsoft PowerPoint. You don't necessarily need to have InDesign, Photoshop, Publisher to do all the things that you would normally want to do, like design flyers, create a resume, things like that. So PowerPoint is a really flexible tool that lets you do a lot of these things, and I'll show you some examples later on. And then you're going to learn to create visually appealing documents. So can anyone tell me why they decided to sign up for this workshop today? Like, why bother to learn design? Yes?
Every internship I was applying for said that they really wanted design experience.
All right. Anyone else? Yeah.
I actually had the opportunity to review a number of resumes myself for hiring purposes, and I noticed that they were, by and large, the Eller standard. And I asked some employers after that what they thought, and if it doesn't visually jump out, it's kind of counts against you. So I thought I should learn design.
Right. All right. So I'm just going to move on into the next element. You can keep adding to your flyer as you go because there will be more time to work on it. Next thing I want to talk about is graphics and photography. So one of the rules that I always follow is that I avoid using cartoon clip art, and I don't just pull images off of Google because of copyright issues. So what options do you have? You can go to stock images and purchase images for use. You can also download vector art or create your own. And then you can always use your own photography in your own work. So some resources that you can use for finding stock images and vector art, they're listed up here. But the one that we are going to be using today is Creative Commons, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. Some rules for choosing the right images. You want to think about choosing good quality images over having a lot of different images. So you could go with something like this, or you could find an image like this to use, and it's more effective. You want to use text-friendly photos. So this one, it's pretty self-explanatory. You can barely read the text that they have over this photo, as opposed to this one. And then you want to pick for your audience. So if you're submitting something that's more professional, you want to choose photos and images that reflect that. If it's a younger audience, maybe you want to choose images that connect with a younger audience. And then you want to pursue relevance. So if you're doing a presentation about technology, well, this isn't the most relevant image because how many people still use flip phones? So here's another option that you can consider instead. And you want to be consistent with the types of images that you use. So if you have photography on one page, you might not want to make the next page graphic art. So now it's your turn. I'm going to show you the Creative Commons website because I found that to be one of the most useful sources that I have. So if you go to creativecommons.org, so this site gives you a list of sources that you can go to for things that people give you the license to use. So they'll upload their own work onto different sites, and then they give you the license to reproduce it. And so this is the site that gives you a list of resources. I'm trying to find. So under the Explore tab, you can go find CC licensed works. And then you can enter whatever it is that you're searching for, and it'll tell you which sites you want to pull it from, and it'll give you that. But say you're looking for photos. I'm going to also show you how to use Flickr. So what's an image that someone is looking for right now? Does someone want to throw something out there?
Someone using an iPad at a music festival.
iPad?
Yeah.
All right, so if you go to flickr.com and you type in iPad in the search bar up at the right, it'll pull up a bunch of photos, but what you want to make sure you do is under license, you want to select Creative Commons only, and it'll filter out all the photos that are in the Creative Commons, which again means that you can use them for your own purposes. So let's see. Say you choose the very first one. It says, if you click on it, it says down here that some rights are reserved. So when you click on that, it'll give you more information for the conditions that you're allowed to use this image in and how you're supposed to give them credit for it. And so for a lot of the photos that I used in my presentation, it says that you have to attribute it to the person who uploaded the photo. And so that's why you'll notice that there's always this up here. It tells you where I got the photo from. Right. I also wanted to talk about what happens if you have multiple images that you're using and you want to stack them on top of one another. So, like, what if you have this shape that you want to put behind your photo? Some of the things that you can do, you can select the shapes that you want to arrange, and then there's this button here that says arrange, and you can either send it to the back, which sends it to the very back of the entire document, or if you are stacking multiple layers and you want to put it behind one layer but in front of another, you just go to bring forward. So it'll bring it forward one layer at a time until it reaches whatever, like if you want to bring it to the very front. And the same works for if you want to put boxes behind text. Again, you can send it to the back and it'll go behind whatever text box you have. All right, I'm going to move on to the next section, which is color. So color is an important element of design because it creates a sense of cohesion for the overall design, and it can also elicit certain emotions, which we'll talk about later. So how do you know what colors go together? Well, there are different color schemes that you can choose from, and once you understand these color schemes, it kind of helps you choose a palette for the base color that you have. So like, for example, this one is called analogous. It's several colors that are close to each other on the color wheel. This one is good for printed material, but it's kind of hard to see when you're creating PowerPoint presentations because on screen it's very hard to distinguish between the different colors. But if you look at this logo that I have up here, it looks nice when it's printed. And then another example of a color scheme is complementary, so opposite sides of the color wheel. This is good for presentations, but you want to be careful not to use bold colors too heavily. So like if you had to look at this for an entire presentation, that's going to hurt your eyes. You want to choose softer colors if you're going to do high contrast or complementary. And then there's monochromatic, which is different shades of the same color. This is a more sophisticated color scheme. And you'll notice that a lot of these colors are limited to like 2 or 3 colors on the wheel because anything that's more than that can be a little bit chaotic and it doesn't create that sense of cohesion that color is supposed to help create. So triad, this is the 3 colors, 3 contrasting colors on the color wheel. This one is probably, well, this one is just fun. If you use bold colors, you can create like a trendy effect. And then there's compound. So if you want a greater variation of colors, you can choose two complementary colors on the wheel, but make them close to each other. And then there's achromatic, which is black and white. And you can check out this color wheel at color.adobe.com. If you ever have trouble picking color schemes, that's where I go for some inspiration. So when you go on the site, there's this box up here, and you can choose different color schemes. And then you can play around with the wheel and choose your base colors. You'll notice that down here it gives you the RGB and hex codes for these colors, and that's especially important when you want to replicate these colors on your PowerPoint file. So a little bit about RGB. This is what it would look like on a PC, and this is what it looks like on a Mac. So RGB stands for red, green, and blue, which are the three colors that they use to make up the entire spectrum of colors that you see on screen. So when you're looking for a certain color, so this one is the U of A red up here, it'll give you the RGB code for it, and you type it in, and it'll give you that specific color. But one thing to keep in mind is that the colors that you see on screen don't appear, or they don't print out the same way, and that's because printers use a different kind of color scheme, which is CMYK. But let me see. Yeah, well, I mean, just keep in mind that if a color is really bold on your screen, it's gonna print out lighter than that. And then I want to talk a little bit about color emotion guide, because when you choose colors, you want to make sure that the color scheme matches whatever it is that you're trying to advertise or market. So if you're going to be selling sustainability, pink might not be the best color choice for that. And you can see that these different brands choose their colors for their logos based on what kind of feel they want to portray. So go ahead and So layout is important because it helps you to prevent clutter, especially if you have a lot of text and a lot of images going on your flyer or whatever it is that you're making. It creates balance and it improves readability, and it also can imply sophistication. So one of the important things to understand is white space, and white space is all of the space that you see around this text in the center. There's a difference between active and passive white space. So active white space is space that you intentionally create between images and text. So all of this here would be active white space. And it helps emphasize things that you want people to pay attention to. And then there's passive white space, which is just the spacing that you see between words and letters. And then another thing to understand is the rule of thirds, which is this theory that if you place points of interest on the intersections of this grid, your photo becomes more balanced, or your design. And it enables the viewer to interact with your design more naturally. So studies show that when you're viewing images, people's eyes naturally go to these points of intersection. They tend to look at these points of intersection more naturally than they do if you place something right in the middle. And so this is an example of how the rule of thirds is used. There's also this. So people will look at not just the intersecting points, but they tend to look more at like the left, the far right, or like the top and the bottom. Just their eyes naturally go there. So something to keep in mind when you're trying to lay out the different elements on your flyers. Some other things that you can do to help adjust the balance, you can either left justify or right justify your text. You can pull out the guides on your PowerPoint to help you create more balanced designs. And then you can also use tabs and line spacing. So show that to you really fast. So if you have this, say you want to increase the spacing between the lines of text that you have, you can do that with this icon up here. And you can maybe increase it to 3-point spacing. Or if you want everything to be more condensed, you can make it 0.8. Let's see. And then if you want to pull out guides to make sure that everything's lined up right, you can go to View, and then Guides. And there's static guides, which outline the center of the document, so you can line up your images against these guides. All right, so I know a lot of you are still finishing up your flyers, but I'm just going to talk about one last thing, and that is file formats. When it comes time to save your file, how do you know what you save it in, and what do the different file extensions mean? So the PowerPoint is really cool because you can save it in formats other than PowerPoint. If you click File Save As, you'll see that there's a lot of things in the drop-down menu that you can choose from. And some of the more common ones when it comes to design would be JPEG, PNG, GIF, and PDF. And so if you are just creating an image, the first three are typically good options to use. GIF is for low resolution web quality files. So if you're just putting it up on social media or, I don't know, just like using it on the web, then you can save it in GIF. But otherwise, JPEG or PNG are options that I usually go for. When we talk about resolution, usually 72 dots per inch would be a low resolution file, and again, that's for web quality files. And then anything that's like around 300 dpi, that would be a high resolution image. If you're printing a banner or just a large photo that you're blowing up, that would be a good resolution to use. But what I really want to talk about is PDF, which I really like because it helps you maintain the integrity of the design. So if you're creating a presentation and you're using a font that you downloaded on your own computer, but you still want to use it on a different computer to share with people, you can save it as a PDF and present that instead. And everything that you saved on your computer, it will appear exactly the same on someone else's computer. But there's also a feature of the PDF that allows you to edit documents and to comment on them, and that's what I want you to try out next. So save your file as a PDF and then share it with someone that you're sitting close to. You can exchange emails and just email your file to that person. All right, so if you pull open the PDF file, you'll notice that at the top here, there's these little icons for markup. And so what you can do is you can give people comments and feedback on their document without changing it yourself. So say you saw a typo somewhere, you could create a sticky note and just type, like, typo, please fix. And you can also highlight, well, let's see. Yeah, you can also draw lines through things and mark it up, which is helpful when you're designing something and you want to send it to someone for feedback. And then when you're done with the whole thing, you can just save it and then send it back to them. So go ahead and play around with this. Give your partner some feedback. If you're done giving feedback to your partner, go ahead and send the file back to them. That's all I have for you today. Does anyone have any questions? No questions? All right, well, thank you so much for sitting in on this workshop. And if you ever want this presentation, I'd be happy to send it over to you. Just come talk to me afterwards and give me your email. And yeah, hopefully you found some of this helpful.